Today, it's my joy to be celebrating our 100th episode with the founders of Homeschool Connections, the sponsors of our program, Walter Crawford and Maureen Wittmann. If you're able to pause and relax with us, we'll be raising a glass together and having a virtual party, and we'd love to have you join in. We're going to talk about our own homeschools, our favorite homeschooling tips, podcast episodes, worst homeschool day ever, favorite easy meals, and inviting you to be a part of Homeschooling Saints. Don't miss this.
Welcome to Homeschooling Saints, the podcast that helps you create the homeschool you love for the people you love. Our host is Lisa Mladinich, a Catholic life coach, TV host, best-selling author, and an instructor at Homeschool Connections.
Hello and welcome. I'm Lisa Mladinich, your host, and we're celebrating today 100 episodes. And we are so grateful to all of you, our listeners, for becoming a part of this worldwide community by inviting us into your homeschools. And we are especially grateful to God for blessing our small efforts to serve this beautiful Catholic community of homeschooling families and those considering homeschooling. It is our delight to serve you. And we want to hear from you, and we would love to have you contribute to this program. I'll be sharing my email address throughout the show and in the show notes. So do reach out. You can find me at lisa@wonderfullymade139.com. And now I'd like to invite our two extremely special guests, special to me, special to many of you, the founders of Homeschool Connections, Walter Crawford and Maureen Wittmann, to lead us in prayer.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you, Lisa.
Great to see you guys.
Great to see you. So we'll start off with prayer in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Eternal Father, I offer you the most precious blood of the divine Son, Jesus, in union with the masses said throughout the world today, for all the holy souls in purgatory, for sinners everywhere, for sinners in the universal church, those in my own home and within my family, for also for these past 99 episodes, and for this episode, and for future episodes of the Homeschooling Saints podcast. Maureen and Lisa, would you like to offer any other intentions?
Please bless all of our listeners and all of the people we interview. Please bless the Catholic homeschooling community. Help us to build up the kingdom for you.
And Lord, I just thank you for Walter and Maureen. They've always had such a heart for you and kind of fell over backwards into creating this company and attracted so many hearts to you, Lord, and supported so many people along the way with creating this place to come and learn. And I'm deeply grateful for the opportunity to be a small part of their efforts. And I praise you, Lord, for bringing us together and for all the ways that you bring homeschoolers together, the way you cross our paths with each other in beautiful, kind of destined ways that help lead us closer to you and bless our families.
And for Lisa and all the work that she's been doing in the podcast. And we ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. This is going to be so much fun. It's just nice to hang out with you guys.
It is. And I do want to say, Lisa, just thank you for being open to this. Walter and I came to you and said, hey, we have this crazy idea. and you said yes. And it's meant the world. It really has. So thank you. You're so dedicated and organized, and you bring all these amazing people to the table. It's been a fun 3 years.
Oh, thank you so much. It's very humbling to hear you say that, because I have to pinch myself every day that you guys thought of me. You know, it felt
Who
like...
else is there?
Exactly. Is there any other Lisa that we'd want to
no
tap
one else
on
we could think of who could do this better than you. So
completely agree.
You guys, no, don't get me weeping right at the start, because I'll be a mess and I won't be able to do anything else.
I got my Kleenex.
Okay, good. All right. So why don't you guys just start us off with what, as long as we're talking about how this all got started and what you were thinking.
Yeah.
Just step us into what that was like for you.
Well, Walter and I are always looking for, how we can better serve the Catholic homeschooling community. And, I personally, for quite a while, was looking for a Catholic homeschool podcast that I could listen to, right? I mean, I'm driving to and from homeschool co-op and like to listen to podcasts because I'm out in the country. It's a 45-minute drive each way. And there wasn't anything out there. So, Walter thought it was a great idea and just Holy Spirit driven,
Yeah, I mean, I think that while I wasn't necessarily a big consumer of podcasts at the time, it prompted me to start looking into that, what Maureen was bringing up. That there aren't many Catholic homeschool podcasts. And I confirmed what Maureen was saying, that, there isn't that many out there, if any. And the ones that were kind of hit or miss, or they weren't consistent. And some of them, they're older and they didn't, they weren't necessarily doing anything. They weren't active. So we thought, well, golly, let's do this. Let's make this happen. So it was a no-brainer. And then we had to ask ourselves, all right, how do we do a podcast? Because we've never done one before. And 2, who would be the person that would do it? And that was a big, because Maureen and I, we're like, well, we could do it, but would we be the right person to do it?
And would we be consistent? Because we're busy doing, running Homeschool Connections. Like, we need someone who can be consistent and stay on top of it and make sure it's a priority. Yeah. Because that was really important.
Lisa was our first choice. And there's not, that was easy.
All right, stop it, you guys.
So cheers to Lisa.
Now I'm starting to wish this wasn't just apple juice.
Well, we just felt that the Catholic homeschooling community really needed their own podcast. There are a lot of great homeschooling podcasts out there, and there are a lot of great Catholic, podcasts out there that can help Catholic homeschoolers. We didn't have our own designated thing, and now some have come about since we started. But at that time, we were pretty much it. Yeah. So that was the motivation, just trying to fill a hole.
And I love the way you can see patterns in the way God speaks to people and reveals his plans, because with Homeschool Connections, even before that, just doing free opportunities for the parents, and then they started asking you for things for their kids, and then amazing people asked you if they could create courses for Homeschool Connections. I mean, the way it all felt, you both have a gift for, almost like a charism for noticing the gap, noticing where a need is not being fulfilled, and then having the courage to step in. To just, we never did this before. How many times did you say that to each other? We've never done this before, but maybe we should. Yeah, right?
Yeah. I guess that's true. When you put it that way, I guess that's true. We really not. I mean, you don't really stop and think. At least I don't. I don't stop and think. Oh, is this? Should we be doing this? Or those questions do come up.
We were asking ourselves questions like, do we need to buy a microphone?
Yeah.
What kind of equipment do we need? How do we record this? What kind of software?
Yeah, that was a big question mark for us. What software do we use? And unfortunately, Lisa, you had a little bit of background already. You'd been, I think, tinkering with Zoom already, and that seemed to fill the biggest void that we were probably having the hardest time with, because naturally you want to be able to interview people remotely in the comfort of their situation, and so it made sense to find something online that could record at the cloud and things of that sort. And so you were kind of the trailblazer on that end. And that was a big question we were struggling with. And you nailed it out of it, so that was perfect. That was probably the biggest in terms of logistics that we needed to have covered, apart from the fact that we needed to secure people that wanted to be interviewed and that would be kind of perfect for the audience that we have. And so, so again, it goes back to, while we set the ball in motion, you're the one pushing it ever since. So there is some, let's not, I think that's a really important factor in keeping this thing going. So, yeah.
Oh, well, I really appreciate it. And I don't want to make it just sound like we're all like, oh, no, you. Yeah. I mean, but
this
I
could
do
get old.
And so we should move on. But I do want to just say that I'm technologically extremely inept. And if you hadn't done all the research and worked really hard at creating all of the technical net for this to happen and for me to just book guests and have great conversations. I mean, you've had my back the whole way. And, Maureen, always in that heart space of what matters to people, what's really going to help them, both of you, really. So we've had the technical, we've always had the three of us great conversations. And so let's touch on some of the other things that have come out of this, our short features, any future plans.
Gosh, I love the short features. So, if you're a listener to the podcast, make sure you're always listening to the very end, because those are just gems, right? Like Chantel and and Paola,
Amy,
and,
Paola,
Palmer.
yeah,
Dave.
oh my Dave. Yeah, they're all so good. So always make sure you listen to the end of. And we are thinking about breaking out and doing like a little like mini podcast, right? So ours tend to be 30, 40 minutes long. Maybe doing like a 5-10 minute version, and maybe start out by featuring those short features in their own little podcast. So we have some ideas to expand on that. We just created a new intro and outro for YouTube. So we're going to be putting up a lot of the past episodes up on YouTube. So we didn't do that originally. It was just this audio file that went up on YouTube. Excuse me. So yeah, we just want to make it more accessible for people, and video so much more. I love podcasts for driving in the car or while I'm working or doing dishes, but sometimes it's nice to have a video too. So yeah. What else are we doing, Walter?
I think we're trying to, when we first started, we just were trying to find a home to put our podcast. And so we landed on Podbean and made that, channeled that through the various ways in which you can access podcasts. But I think we're trying to really develop the podcast page. So it's off the homepage. It is currently, but having its own place, calling it its own home. Right now, it's kind of a stepchild in the sense that it's not really integrated into the family as much as, say, if we had just homegrown it from the webpage or website. So that's another aspect of it we're trying to incorporate, and that'll make it even more accessible to everyone that's out there who's a consumer of the podcast. And frankly, because through the video work that we're doing, the intro and outro stuff, we're trying to generate more subscribers, because we want people to realize what good content's out there that's already been done by Lisa and the other guests. So to that end, where the videos themselves have invitations at the end that did not exist before, other than the verbal requests that Lisa would make. There's going to be a button there that you'll see on these videos to subscribe, and also to see the other videos that are before it or after it, or other related content that would be very beneficial for people to consume. So I think that's a big part of it. And lastly, I would say in our show notes that are so well done, what we're trying to do is for recurring guests, for guests that have happened in the past, we're including previous episodes that they've been a part of. So if you're trying to figure out, okay, well, you're going to hear names that we're going to mention about our favorite episodes and whatnot, you're going to know that in those in those episodes that they've been a part of, and say it's their second or third time, we'll include the previous episode links in the show notes for those guests. So. Yeah.
I think it's important to note too, Lisa, that while Walter and I run Homeschool Connections, this podcast was created for all Catholic homeschool families. This is not a Homeschool Connections podcast. Walter and I are the producers, but we didn't do this just for Homeschool Connections. We did this for everybody. So,
mm-hmm. Here. Okay, so you mentioned episodes. Throw out some of your favorites. What do you remember most fondly that we've done? What stands out for you?
Well, it's kind of like picking your favorite child. How am I supposed to?
It's really hard.
I loved when we had Brother Guy. Like, I thought that was just, to me, that was kind of like, wow, we got the Vatican astronomer, right? I mean, how cool is that? So that was a really good one. We've had Mary Ellen Barrett on a few times. She's always good. Kendra Tierney's been on a few times too. She does liturgical year stuff. She's coming up, I think, for some Advent and Christmas episodes. So I'm excited about that. Paola Ciskanik, she did Curing Mommy Overwhelm. Yeah. And so that's a really important topic, right? I just really met, I think, Catholic homeschool mom really needed. That's one of our most popular episodes. Tony Esselin, Christmas is coming up. He did his episode on Christmas Carol. That was good. So I don't know. There's so many. It's hard to. It's just off the top of my head.
I love.
Yeah, I would agree with those. I think the ones that stand out are the ones that, it is hard to pick the best, very best one or the favorite one. But I will say that the things that really help moms and parents where they're at, when they're at it. I think those are the ones that typically are the ones I tend to, because you hear about, there's comments that are made in our community, on the Facebook page when we post them there too. The ones that, and even the comments that are made by parents on the podcast channel, they'll make about, well, this really is what I needed when I needed it. I'm also a big advocate for the things that are kind of very practical in the sense that, like I think it's Patrick Cavanaugh did an episode on internet security and how to keep your children safe, given the plight that internet has a lot of beautiful things about it, but it also has some negatives to be sure. And his interest in trying to protect children, and I think that was maybe not one of the most watched or listened to episodes, but it's certainly I think is one of the more valuable, given the difficulties that parents are facing and students with trying to protect their kids from all the bad stuff that's out there. So those are some of the things that come to mind for me. And by the way, Homeschooling 101 and 102, I think I know who did that podcast.
Maureen Wittmann.
Maureen Wittmann. So those are the kinds of things.
Yeah, that might be the most watched one.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's simply because we try to, that's one that we try to encourage parents to watch when they, buy a class or they're looking to, part of
Well, they came out of the pandemic, right? There's so many new homeschoolers.
And they were launched at the beginning of the school year, so that had a lot to do with it too. So it just made a lot of sense. And I think so many people can relate to the need to understand the basics, especially now, right? In the pandemic, like you said, Maureen, so many parents kind of walked into this, or in some cases forced into it. And now I think they're staying in it for all the right reasons, because they see kind of the way things are going in the public school system. It's a real challenge, right, for these parents to kind of have to walk into this. But I think so many of them, and I follow homeschooling.com on Twitter, and I can't tell you how many testimonies come up with parents saying, I didn't know what homeschooling was. I didn't know how to do it, but I've been doing it for the last, few months, a year, 2 years now, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So many parents find the beauty out of what was a kind of a dark moment, right? In our time, recent history, they found the beauty in doing this, and I think that's typical of. I'm not saying everyone it's right for them. Maureen and I do not subscribe to that philosophy, but we do know that it's right for a lot of people, especially when you are motivated to try, and all parents are, but they're motivated to try and do what's best for their children, and they see the love of learning that kind of blossoms through homeschooling. Anyway, so a lot of people are like those episodes because of how it helps them become better homeschoolers, despite the circumstances that they're put in.
Yeah, and we have a lot of episodes that deal on in joy, things that have to do with the liturgical year or just times of struggle, where we've had some amazing people, including Mary Ellen Barrett and others, who have talked about holding on to that. I think one of the things that tickles me pink is that the women and the men on the show tend to do really interestingly unique things. In other words, women we've had best nutritional food on a budget, or cheap interior design tips, or asking for help when you really need it. Mary Ellen Barrett started us off with episode 1, Busting Myths About Homeschooling. It's that heartfelt, practical, but also that underneath it all, the inspiring piece. And then we've had some of our incredible instructors, and we've, in the year of St. Joseph, we're having kind of an explosion of amazing men, which is neat. But last year we had Tom Fredericks talking about science, and the guy he and his family are practically homesteading. They have orchards and everything else. So for him, science it's the lab, but it's also life. It's also the outdoors. And we just had recorded an episode coming in the spring with Nick Wilson on homesteading, things like that. Like this kind of the husband's involvement involvement. We did a beautiful one in our first season with Joseph Pierce on the role of the father in the homeschool. And so those are some of my favorites. The really practical, the inspiring, and you mentioned Brother Guy, Consul Magno, the Vatican astronomer. So much fun, such a funny guy. I need to get him back on again.
Yes,
Brilliant.
yes.
And an incredibly inspiring faith, and that's the other thing too. And then I think of Jenny Bales every time we have her on. She makes me feel like I can do more. She just is so. She is such a mom in the trenches, saying, "Well, we needed retreats for moms, so we created Do It Yourself." We did it. Or I noticed everybody on my Facebook book group needed curriculum suggestions, so now she has this mega curriculum list. So I guess just people's responses, and some of the incredible instructors too that we have at Homeschool Connections who have been on the show. They're wonderful. Many of them homeschoolers themselves.
And that's the beauty of the Catholic homeschooling community. I mean, that's something I saw from day one when I first came into this, was this desire to help one another. Okay, like Jenny, we need this, so let's do it. I mean, how many times do you see that in the community? That's so important, So I encourage everyone to really be enmeshed in your local community. And if you see a need, start it or help someone start it,
I couldn't agree more. I think one of the most endearing parts of being in the community that we're a part of, anytime anyone has a child, there's always a rallying cry.
Meal train.
Bring them food, bring them food. We know you need it, that kind of thing. And, that I think that pretty much it's kind of interesting. You contrast that with my cousins who live across town, and they don't homeschool. But when we offered to bring them food after they had a child, it was like, what? Why are you doing that? What are you talking about? It was a foreign concept to them, a completely foreign idea, which kind of struck me. Like, I can't believe that that's such a different idea. But that was pretty much what we kind of enveloped us when we started having children, or when we continued to have children. Once we were part of that community, being part of the local experience is what kind of helped sell me on the homeschooling experience. It wasn't like that was the biggest thing, but it certainly was part of it.
Oh, yeah. So draw out of your own experiences some of the things that you would just like to share with our listeners, best tips or a philosophy, an outlook. What has helped you?
So I would say to that, well, as a dad, I think it's really important that the dads do a number of things, but you have to be kind of you have to be that person to help back up your wife, if she's the one homeschooling. If it's the other way around, then if they're choosing the foot, which we know of some examples, then of course the mom would be there to back up the dad. But I think that's key, and that type of support comes in a number of ways. One, I think it means that the realization that your wife or the other person, your husband, needs time away from the kids in a way that's constructive for them personally. And it might mean that they need, like, I'll give my wife off every Tuesday and Wednesday evening to do what she needs to do, to plan, or to just, what's the word I'm looking for? Just decompress. Yeah, decompress. Hang out with her friends. That for her, that means a lot. I mean, it helps. It kickstarts her energy, bucket, if you will. It recharges her battery, and that is really, really important. Secondly, I would say, as a dad, to be there, to be the principal, or to be even the substitute teacher if necessary. It doesn't have to be just limited to the administration. It could be that you're actually involved in the teaching side of things. And teaching comes in a number of ways, right? That's one thing I love about homeschooling. And frankly, this is what I kind of garnered from adult education in the degree that I received, my postgraduate degree, is this idea that education does not have to end or begin with high school or end with high school or end with college or a 4-year degree. It continues. In fact, that's what most people experience. So why should it be any different for our children, right? That means education can happen in various aspects. So, for example, taking the kids like I worked on with a friend of ours who's he has a wood shop in his on his property. So I took my son out there and we worked on building a step stool from scratch. And so he's learning the math that's behind it and the precision and things like that, and then how to care for it, how to sand it down, how to paint it, and stuff like that. Projects like that, those are kind of the adulting 101 projects, right? It gives them that can-do attitude that dads can pass along to their children. So, and I guess the last thing, and probably should be number one, but I think be that spiritual head for your family. Be that person who says, I think we need to say a rosary, today, or maybe let's go to mass today as a family. Let's do daily mass, and be that person, be the dad, be the role model for the kids, to bring them. Because I think that if you can fill those gaps, right, then the mom, or if it's the other way around, can fill in the educational aspects of it, then the experience is a total experience, I think. So those are my things. That's what's kind of going through my mind.
Beautiful. Maureen, what are you thinking?
Well, I think for me, the biggest thing was the realization that I didn't have to follow the school model. Right. When my first day officially homeschooling, I had bought some desks at a garage sale. I made the kids sit at the desk and raise their hands to go to the bathroom and called on them. And you don't have to follow that school model. In fact, probably the best piece of homeschooling advice I've ever been given, and anyone who's heard me speak has probably heard this before, but skip kindergarten. Best piece of homeschooling advice I ever got. Those younger years are a time to build a joy and love for discovery, for learning. I'm in the better late than early crowd, right? What's that book, Better Late Than Early, by the, what's the name of that couple? But anyway, that to me, that was the, we'll find it and put it in the show notes.
Writing it down.
Yeah, for me, it was just coming to the realization that I don't have to follow the school model. I don't have to follow their curriculum. I don't have to follow their scope and sequence. And I can skip kindergarten. And
meaning not regimenting your child at an early age.
Not regimenting. Yeah.
Natural.
I mean, kindergarten, right? When I was a kid, we didn't even have kindergarten.
Yeah.
I didn't, my Catholic school didn't have kindergarten. It wasn't even a thing. And then for a long time, it was optional, and now it's mandatory. And instead of playing and having fun, we're getting into academics and already. So, yeah, I mean, you can still learn how to spell and how to read, how to do math. You can learn those things, but it should be natural and fun. And that kind of environment at that age, it doesn't need to be all workbooks all day long. They don't have to sit in a chair. They can sit on a ball. They can be outside, and make the outdoors your classroom in those early years.
Yeah, and I love your episode on making learning natural in the summertime, Maureen.
Oh, yeah.
Because it really opens up what that looks like and what are some of the inspirations and touchstones for really making the most out of just being outdoors with your kids.
Right. I mean, I was just in a Q&A for Catholic homeschool moms in the Thrive community recently, and they came up, and I was telling how, my oldest son was the national champion for muzzle loading. Now, knowing how to do black powder, how to do muzzle loading is not a skill that he uses in his adult life. Right. I mean, it's not something he had to learn to do his job, but he did learn from it. He learned how to be on a team. He learned how to focus. He learned how to work hard to reach his goals. So everything doesn't have to be purely academic for a child to be successful in their life after high school.
Yeah, amen and amen. And I'll add just two quick favorite tips for me is just to use where you are. If you're in a city, oh my goodness, the opportunities for culture and for being among people in that kind of a sidewalk culture. If you're in the rural areas, oh my goodness, foraging and nature study and just so much outdoors, reenacting Civil War battles as my niece's husband did as a kid up in rural Canada. But the point is just look around and also do what you can to be with people. Don't isolate if you can. And then let's step in just quickly. Let's do a little round robin of brief stories, worst homeschool day ever.
I can start off that. And I think for me, I think it's the times when my wife is sick, I'm busy with work, and we got to find something for the kids to do. That's a bit of a challenge, right?
Those are rough.
So it doesn't happen often, but when it does happen, it's probably the biggest struggle that we all face. And I think the solution is patience, right? Tomorrow's another day. I think we tend to get caught up in, I think all of us do. We're so impatient nowadays. Everything has to be happening. You have to have an answer immediately, right? There has to be some resolution, and we're not willing to wait. I think patience in that situation and the recognition is that, we're not, this isn't about a 1 day or 2 day thing. This is a long-term, involved, committed, relationship-based project, and that's called mom, dad, children, right? Mm-hmm. And God binding it all together. And I think that we tend, anyway, so I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, but the worst day was, just kind of, this is going nowhere kind of day, and for good reasons. And then, but realizing that this just because, it kind of makes me reflect on the fact that I remember a priest telling us, this is another parish. He said, based on the confessions, what I hear in confession, he said, your kids are better off, even high schoolers are better off. You put them in a coloring book and crayons in front of them and homeschooling them that way rather than sending them to public school. Now, by the way, not all public schools are like that, or I just do as a caveat, but his experience and the way he was positioning is like, there's so much garbage out there that's affecting these kids. You're better off. So, realizing that that's the alternative, right? Or that is a possible alternative. It's okay. This too will pass. The shoe might pass too, but I think that's probably the worst day. And I'd say my answer to that is just be patient, right?
So good. Maureen, what came to mind for you?
I'm kind of racking my brain, like what. So I'm done homeschooling, right? I mean, my youngest is a freshman in college. I'm done. And I guess I have rose-colored.
Maureen, don't rub it in. Don't rub it in.
Well, yeah, because I have the joy right now of supporting my son and my oldest daughter, who are both homeschooling. That's pure joy. But yeah, it's kind of like, my mom, I remember saying one time, oh, Maureen, I don't remember having any trouble with you when you were a teenager. And I'm like, what? Where were you? but you look back and I see all the good times and I'm at the other end now. And what I see is the fruits of our efforts. I'm sure there were bad days. Just don't dwell on them. Just move on and, all right, reflect. What did we do? Why was that a bad day? And what can we do to make sure that doesn't happen again? or how do we fix it? I know when we had particularly bad days, there were times when I would just say, okay, everyone get in the car. We're going to McDonald's Playland. We're going to call our friends. We're going to go in the backyard and run and play. We're going to burn off some energy or go to a museum. That was usually my, my way of getting around a bad day. But honestly, I'm having a hard time thinking of any particularly bad days that we had.
It's so nice to hear, Maureen, that you remember the good times.
Yeah. So those of you who are in the midst of it, like you remember those bad times when you're in the middle of it, but just know that the good outweighs the bad. And when you get to my side of it, it's going to be all worth it. It's so worth it. Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
Right.
Be patient. Be patient.
Yeah.
And by the way, we're in the middle of it, right?
You're in the middle of it still.
Well, our youngest is 4, so we have a long road ahead of us still. We graduated our oldest, but we still have 5 in between, right? The 5 coming after. So there's a lot still of work that lies ahead. But you know what? We are seeing the fruits of it too, and we're seeing that it's okay, you know. And
you know what else? A friend of mine once said, and this was kind of one of those pivotal moments for me. You know, it's one of those moments when I'm searching, boarding schools in France, and she said, Maureen, raising children's hard. You have bad days when they go to school too. Trust, and we have more of them because her kids were in school, and that was kind of a changing point for me. So, if you're having struggles homeschooling, you're going to have struggles when they go to school too. It's just parenting is hard, period.
Yeah, it really is. And I just want to share one little thing too, is that it took me several years to convince my husband to homeschool. And then the day after he finally said, okay, let's do it, and I ordered a box of school from one of the great companies, he found out he was being laid off. And so I thought, oh no, I'm going to have to return it as soon as it arrives, get her back in school. And because this was literally right before school was starting. But God provided. He ended up doing part-time and kind of freelance work for 3 years as we first started homeschooling, and we had so much time with Daddy. So I just want to say that God does provide. We've interviewed people on this program who have homeschooled through very severe chronic illness, through bereavement, through all sorts of troubles, and troubles do come, but God draws our families closer together in those struggles. It's really quite beautiful when you look at it in retrospect. Doesn't mean it's easy when it's happening, as you said, as you've both said. Yeah. How about those days when there's no time to make dinner and everybody's hungry and things are about to all fall apart? What have you both relied on, or your wife, Walter? I don't know if you cook in your home.
Oh yeah.
What do you do for that quick meal in an emergency?
Well, I do cook. Actually, I like cooking. I don't cook the healthiest meals, but I'm good at cooking. At least I'm good at cooking some things.
Are you telling me you're a good Southern cook?
I can cook. I can cook some decent comfort food.
Awesome.
Especially if a little spice in it, a little kick in it, I can do that. For us, when we find ourselves kind of short on time, there are two options that come to mind. One, we love a good Stouffer's lasagna.
So good, right? They're
not bad at all, and a big one will feed a family. And you think that's on the cheap if you think about it, how many people are feeding with that. So that's one thing that we do. Quick meals. I used to think hamburgers took a long time, but if you just stay with the basics, if you just want a patty and you want it cooked. I watched a video from Chef Gordon Ramsay on how to cook a hamburger.
He's amazing.
He is amazing. And 3 minutes on both sides of the hamburger. That's all you need. A high heat.
Smash burger.
It's amazing. And it's juicy and it's really good. But you could cook something like that. Although with meat prices today in 2021, it's gotten a little more expensive than but I think, but those are the kinds of things that come to mind. What we like to do are making our own pizzas. So we'll sometimes periodically do that, where we just make our own pizza with pizza dough and throw out some sauce and pepperoni and cheese and call it done. And kids love it too because they're usually involved in making it, and they're rolling the dough out and stuff like that. So. And that's a pretty quick meal. It gets kind of messy, and it does take some cajoling in some cases to get the kids to do stuff. But I like the quick meal like that if we're talking about something. And I guess the other thing is probably if there's going to be a busy week ahead or a busy day ahead, what we try to do, we're not really good at it, but we try to do if we have enough forethought. So we'll cook a lot of food on Sunday, and make sure that we have enough for leftovers the next day or the day after. And on occasion, we'll even we'll actually prepare food in advance, right? That's the rare occasion. Let's freeze it, and then we'll make it. We'll thaw it out when it's time. But those are the kinds of things we try to do. Keep it on the cheap, or even to make it an easy meal.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Maureen, what came to mind for you?
Oh, the crock pot. I mean, every homeschool day is busy. Every homeschool day, it's, you can't make gourmet meals. And we did something like what Walter said, cooking on Saturday and putting stuff in the freezer. But for me, it was the crock pot. And I even did a chapter. I dedicated a chapter in a Catholic Homeschool Companion on the crock pot. Now today we have the Instapot. So, the crock pot I like because I could put stuff in it in the morning, right? We could go off to our homeschool co-op or whatever, come home and dinner's ready. But, if you forget to turn on the crock pot and you have an Instapot, I mean, you can throw in frozen meat, right? Frozen chicken and some peppers and whatever in the fridge, and you got dinner. So
that's amazing.
I would echo that. By the way, one thing, here's a quick meal. If you ever want to try, this is introduced to us by family. You can go to Costco if you have a Costco in your area, or you don't have to have Costco. If you pick your favorite sausage of choice. And I don't mean like breakfast sausage. I mean the kind of the link sausage,
like Italian sausage.
Yeah, whatever. Whatever you find. Like what we like to do is we like to get the kielbasa, and you get a kielbasa sausage, which I found out was actually named after a guy. It's not really a type of sausage. It's just named after a guy. Anyway, but you cut it up in half-inch sections, and as many as you want. Throw it in the Instant Pot. Put in some barbecue sauce. Put in a little water to help pressurize it. 8 minutes, done. And it tastes like restaurant quality. It's so good. So and we use Sweet Baby Ray's barbecue sauce.
I love Sweet Baby Ray's.
Oh, I love it too.
Delicious. It is so good. Easy. Takes about 15 minutes to prepare.
Awesome. I used to keep, because we have all sorts of special food restrictions, I would keep a gluten and dairy-free, a few of these little boxes of mac and cheese in the freezer, cans of tuna, frozen peas. I would combine those three things for a quick meal. It was delicious. Just peas, mac and cheese, and tuna. It was like an instant casserole.
The best meals are simple.
Unbelievably. Anyway, we're going to run out of time, but just quickly, favorite resources or somebody who inspired you?
So someone who inspired me when I first started homeschooling, someone gave me Laura Berquist's book, Designing Your Own Classical Curriculum. So this was back in the day, when it was stapled down the middle, right? She was selling it at conferences.
Oh, wow.
But that helped me a lot. But probably the biggest influence on me was just local community, those local women, those local friends, those unsung heroes who took me under their wing. And I mean, it was one of them who gave me Laura Berquist's book, which I ended up owning. I have so many copies because I give it away and get a new one. But it's just those local friendships, meeting for Mass on First Fridays, building different clubs and community and helping each other and advising one another. And when someone is sick, helping them, or having a baby. When I found myself really ill, these women coming and taking my kids, to their homeschool clubs, bringing me meals and doing my grocery shopping, and but also giving me advice on those days when, again, right, Googling boarding schools in France, talking me off the edge, right? Those were probably the two big influences when I first started. Was that book and just local community, those local friends. God bless them.
I'll put Laura's book in the show notes too.
Okay.
I would say to that question, I was the one who kind of introduced the idea of homeschooling to my wife. It was, at least I was the advocate for it. She might have mentioned it to me, but I think I was the one who really was the advocate for it because, again, I was going through my degree program in adult learning, and I thought, they keep talking about how most learning happens outside of school. So why not try this? Why not kind of bring this along with our own children? And clearly at the time, this is in the early 2000s, we're already seeing the degradation of the schooling system that had been developing for the last 10, 15 years, whatever, 20 years maybe. And so, we were like, we felt reluctant to put our kids into school. And at the time we only had one or two children. So it was me pushing, and they were young, so we weren't really at a point where we were going to be schooling them formally anyway, anytime soon. But it was I put that out in front of her, and it was through that graduate program that I learned like all these different facets of it. So I said, let's do this. Can we be willing to give it a try? And so she, like you gave us praise, Lisa, in the beginning for taking that risk. My wife did the same. She kind of heeded my wishes, I guess is what I would say. She's a teacher too, so that helped her a little bit. A former teacher, so that helped her have her more confidence. But she heeded it, and then we kind of moved forward together. We said this is going to be good for us, and so that was probably the biggest initial influence. In terms of resources, I would say I loved Maureen and I have had a synergy even before we were business partners. And that's kind of the funny thing about all this is that, and that's another story for another podcast. But Maureen wrote a book on For the Love of Literature. And I fell in love with that book because it is exactly the way I think homeschooling. You could use that as your formulaic approach. If you need a formula, that's a great one because it gives you a whole, especially the earlier years, right? You give you all these books on that kids they're being read to, or they're being taught, and they simply don't know about it. Like Circumference and the Knights of the Round Table is a book that Maureen recommends in that book. And it's a brilliant book about teaching them math, but they're reading about it. It's phenomenal. And I love stuff like that. So I think, those kind of niches you find from time to time, those I'd call them nuggets or Easter eggs, as it were, are things that are influential. And lastly, I would say conferences. I found conferences to be a gel, and I mean in-person conferences, and when they were had, and even the virtual ones have been very, very beneficial. So. Those are the kind of, and I love in-persons because it's amazing the kind of people you meet while you're there, and just seeing the smiles on their faces, getting to know the kids. I think that's really cool. I'll never forget one of the conferences. A quick sidebar. I was at a conference in Minnesota, and a young man walks up to me. He says, "Mr. Crawford, can I have your autograph?" I'm like, "Sure." And he said, "Well, my brother, you're the founder of Homeschool Connections, and my brother has Philip Campbell's signature, and I feel like since you're the founder, your signature will be worth more than Mr. Campbell's signature because you're the founder." I'm like, "Oh, I guess if it's worth anything, it'll probably take 20,000 years for it to have any value, but just because of its antiquity, no other reason." But anyway, so yeah, it was. That was kind of but I love that kind of experience. Those meaningful connections you build with people at these conferences. So.
I've met some of my students at conferences as well. It's super fun. I'll just say that my favorite resource always has been my friends, and Maureen mentioned that, and you've both mentioned such, oh my gosh, inspiring things throughout this conversation. As I'm listening to you, I'm absorbing it. There's so many times when I'm listening to people who are either currently homeschooling or they're veterans, where it almost makes me want to step back in time. Yes, it was hard, but there's so many things, when you just talk to other people that can inspire you. And that's what we hope this podcast will do. Everybody, if you have thoughts about things you'd like to share on the show, reach out to me, Lisa at wonderfullymade139.com. Feel free to reach out to us through Homeschool Connections. Check out our course catalogs and our unlimited access program. And do check out this podcast, share it with your friends, subscribe. We're so blessed to be growing together with you. Any final thoughts to close us out with, Maureen and Walter?
Oh, gosh. Go ahead, Walter.
I was just going to say, I think it's first off, love the idea of a 100th anniversary episode. And I'm grateful to be part of it. I would say that looking forward, we'd love to have 200 episodes, right? And celebrate that. And you can help make that possible. So offer your ideas. Forget anyone who's listening to this that thinks they would love to be a guest on here, and tell us why. And we would love to at least consider it. Because we find that, we are not, what's the word I'm looking for? So arrogant, I guess is the word I'd say, to think that we know who the right people are that should be listening to this podcast or should be on the podcast. By no means. If you feel like you have something to offer the homeschooling community, please reach out to us, and we would love to have you on the show. And I would just say thank you to the people that do listen to the podcast. Help keep sharing with others that that would find it to be very valuable in their lives, and we'd love to be part of it.
Oh, thank you, Walter.
Yeah, just everything Walter said. There isn't really much more to add. We're in this for the long run. We may be doing this 10 years from now, having our 10-year anniversary. Well, I'll be really old by then, but
me too.
But yeah, I just encourage people to leave comments, tell us what you like, what you'd like to see, what speakers you'd like to see, like and share. And that helps us grow the community and reach more people and help more people. So, and again, just thank you, Lisa, for being open to this. It's a big commitment that you took on in doing this. So yeah, here.
Thank you.
Here. And
cheers, everyone. Thank you.
Another 100 episodes.
Another 100 episodes.
Great school year.
All glory to God, and God bless you, my friends. Thank you for being with us. It's such a privilege.
Welcome to the Thriving Catholic Homeschool Blueprint. My name is Paola Ciskanik. I'm the co-founder of the Catholic Homeschool Network, Conferences, and Community. Here's my story. You see, I am by nature very goal-oriented and ambitious, and I sabotage myself and my sense of inner peace by using somebody else's vision of education, and thus imposing this on me and my family. This vision was attractive at first, in that it aligned with my comfort zone. It suggested a curriculum and a schedule that resembled the things that I was familiar with. Okay, it had to promise to give my kids the best education, to get them ready for the world. That it was also Christ-centered and beautiful. But in just a few years, very little of it was centered around my particular family. You see, it was still very school designed. Now, being very goal-oriented, I tended towards lists and lesson plans to just use them as a guide. And if you check off all the assignments, things get done, right? Well, yes, they did, but at a great cost. I found that I had to tweak those plans more and more each year with each child. You see, the overall roadmap of these plans didn't take into account my particular children's strengths, interests, their needs. There wasn't time spent for discovery, for wonder. There was way too much time spent on covering all the regular subjects that are covered in a traditional brick and mortar school. And even though there was a great philosophy behind many of the plans I used, they were infused with literature. They were totally Christ-centered. There just never was enough time to do it all, ever. Now, I totally take ownership of making my homeschool like school because I chose this method. I like the accountability, and I wanted to never shortchange my kids, not to ruin their education. I lacked confidence. What I needed to do was to tap into the grace of yes. Yes, the yes to my marriage, the yes to the openness of children. See, but then I hit a wall, and that was when my fifth child was having trouble learning to read. She didn't easily take to school at its pre-designed grade levels. She needed to blossom in her own time, and I knew that deep in my bones, we needed to change. I had to stretch myself, get uncomfortable, and make serious changes. I finally let go and stopped schooling. I finally had our family move towards the ultimate vision of education, the one that my husband and I originally determined for our kids. We wanted our children to feel a deep sense of success, know what that feels like, to spend time in discovery, in wonder, in learning, and to find their individual gifts and passions and interests to serve this world with their uniqueness. We truly embraced our unique family life, busy in particular to the individuals that make up my particular family. We scrapped big subjects. We used a combination of different learning and teaching techniques, and each and every year it was different as I adapted to the new season of life. I found my inner peace. What I want you to do now is download my guide when you hit the button below this video. In it, I have some reflection questions. And I'm going to ask you to carve out time with your spouse to reaffirm or to get super clear on your particular family's educational goals. Post it somewhere in your house where you can review it often, maybe monthly, weekly, but definitely yearly as things change in your life, which they will year after year. By getting clear, by reaffirming your why you homeschool, you have taken step number 1, which is so foundational to creating a successful, thriving homeschool plan. In the next video, I'm going to cover step 2. Once I've got my why, now how do I find the best fit for my family? I will reveal the cornerstone key principle that I stumbled upon, I discovered, that revolutionized how I and the hundreds of families I coached find balance. Yes, I call it the one goal per child per year. Now, 3 years ago marked my last year homeschooling, 25 years in the making. My story is unique to my family. You can absolutely, without a doubt, make your story unique to your family too. So right now, I'd love to know a little bit about you. What does having a realistic, doable homeschool plan tailored to the unique children with your why, your educational goal, what would that mean to you? Please add your comments below this video. And of course, if you like this video, you found it useful, I'd be so honored if you could share it with family and friends. See you in the next video. May God bless you abundantly.
And that's our show for today. Our program is sponsored by homeschoolconnections.com. Be sure to subscribe to Homeschooling Saints and leave us an honest review. God bless you, and thank you for joining us.